Uncle, please make it low, but leave the front, the boy said, clutching a 50 naira note. The barber smiled. Don't worry, I know what you want. This is the precision zone. They all loved him. The community called him Dami, even though his real name was Tunde Obasi. He had a way with people, polite, humble, always smiling. His shop was small, just enough for two waiting chairs and a wooden cabinet with combs, creams, and faded pictures of celebrity haircuts. But it was clean and organized, unlike many in the area, and above all, it was cheap. 1,000 naira for adults, 500 for children. In Lagos, that was unheard of. Soon, he became the go-to barber for the neighborhood. Parents trusted him with their children, and teenagers trusted him with their style. Dami's shop became more than a business. It became a part of the community's rhythm. But none of them knew. None of them knew what he did. After sweeping the hair into the dustpan and locking the salon for the night, until one day, when his lousy and flamboyant wife mistakenly opened her mouth to tell the town. It was on a Tuesday morning that everything started to unravel. A woman, late 30s, well-dressed, a little too quiet, stood across the road, watching the shop. The customers noticed her. One mother leaned close to another and whispered, "Who is that woman? Do you know her?" The other shook her head. "No, I have never seen her before." The first mother frowned. "Why is she standing there like that? She is not in line. She has been there since I came." The other woman looked again, uneasy. Maybe she is waiting for someone, but she wasn't. The woman didn't shift. She didn't speak. She just stood there, staring, like a tree rooted deep in the ground. Inside the shop, Dami pretended not to notice, but he did. He noticed everything. That night, Dami closed early. He told his customers the electricity was out. They believed him. It was Lagos. Anything could happen. The following Saturday, Dami attended a birthday party with his wife Janet. She wasn't the loud type, always reserved, respectful. But that evening, Janet drank more than she should have. Her laughter became louder, her words looser. At their table, a group of women sat, fanning themselves and talking about children, work, and life in Lagos. Janet sat among them, a little too relaxed. "You know," she said suddenly, waving her cup, her voice sharp with drink, "people think my husband is just an ordinary barber. If only they knew." The women laughed, leaning closer to hear more. One of them, a plump lady with curious eyes, grinned and asked, "If only they knew what?" Janet smiled, a strange, tipsy smile. Her eyes were half closed, her words slurred. "If only they knew," she said softly, shaking her head slowly. "Ah, never mind." The women gasped and leaned even closer. "Tell us now," one urged, her voice playful but eager. Janet waved her hand carelessly, spilling a little drink on the table. "Nothing," she said with a laugh. "Forget I said anything." The women exchanged looks. Some laughed nervously, but one woman didn't laugh at all. She kept her eyes on Janet, watching every movement, every word. Her name was Jessica. She was the same woman who had stood across the road from Dami's shop days earlier, staring in silence. Her lips curled slightly, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. As the party went on, Jessica's mind raced. If only they knew what, she repeated to herself. She didn't drink, she didn't laugh, she just sat there, her curiosity growing like a flame fed by dry wood. By the time the party ended and people began to leave, Jessica knew one thing for certain. She would not forget those words. She would find out exactly what Janet meant, no matter what it took. 3 days later, early morning again, just like any other day, Dami arrived at his shop to find a crowd. Not customers this time, a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces, not the usual happy customers waiting for a haircut. No, this crowd was different. Their faces were tight and serious, their voices low and tense. Some people he knew, familiar mothers, teenagers, and men from the neighborhood. Others were strangers, their eyes sharp, filled with suspicion. And right in the center of them all was Jessica, standing tall and still, like a tree in the middle of a storm. Dami's heart thumped in his chest. His palms grew damp. He swallowed hard, forcing a smile to his lips. "What is going on here?" he asked, trying to sound calm, even though his voice trembled slightly. The crowd parted a little, and Jessica stepped forward slowly. Her eyes were like fire, unblinking, burning straight into his. Her voice was steady, cold, and sharp. "We want to see where you keep the hair." For a moment, silence fell. Even the street seemed to pause. Dami's breath caught in his throat. He blinked, trying to hide the sudden panic that surged through him. What? What are you talking about?" he asked with a shaky laugh, waving his hand like it was all a joke. "Hair? This is a barber shop. Hair goes into the trash, of course." But Jessica didn't smile. Her stare only deepened, and from the back a man's angry voice rang out. "Answer her! You think we don't know what you've been doing?" The crowd roared in agreement. Mothers clutched their children closer, whispering prayers under their breath. Teenagers exchanged nervous glances. Men folded their arms, ready for a fight. Dami stepped back, his chest tight. "This is nonsense," he said quickly, his voice rising. "Someone is lying to you." "I have done nothing wrong." Before he could speak further, another voice cut through the air, sharper than a blade. "Call Janet." Dami's blood ran cold. His wife's name on their lips felt like poison. He raised his hand, his face twisting with anger. "No," he barked. "Leave my wife out of this. She has nothing to do with any of this." But the crowd didn't listen. They began to move as one, their feet pounding the dusty ground like drums of war. Step by step, they turned away from the shop and started walking toward Dami's house. Dami's breath came in short gasps as he stumbled after them. "No! Stop! Where are you going?" he shouted desperately. But his voice was swallowed by the chants and murmurs of the crowd. In that moment, Dami knew. The secret he had buried so carefully was about to rise like a ghost in broad daylight, and there would be no hiding anymore. Janet was at home. She had a scarf tied loosely around her head. When she opened the door and saw the faces, she knew it was over. "You people, please," she said, weakly, her voice breaking. "Don't cause trouble. Let's all be calm." Jessica stepped forward, her face hard, her tone cold and unyielding. "Janet," she said slowly, "tell them what you told us at the party." Janet's lips quivered. Her eyes darted from one face to another, then finally to Jessica's burning stare. I didn't mean to say anything," she stammered. Her voice was barely louder than a whisper. "I was drunk." The crowd murmured in anger. Some shook their heads. A child began to cry softly, clinging to his mother's wrapper. "Drunk or not, you spoke," Jessica snapped, her voice rising like a whip. "Tell them the truth now, Janet. Tell them what your husband does with their hair." Janet's legs gave way, and she fell to her knees. Tears rolled down her cheeks in hot, trembling streams. She covered her face with both hands, shaking like a leaf caught in the wind. I can't," she sobbed. "Please don't make me say it. I didn't mean to talk that day." Jessica's fists clenched at her sides. "Why can't you talk? Why are you protecting him? We all deserve to know." But Janet only cried harder. The truth was chained inside her heart, bound by something far stronger than fear alone. She had taken an oath, one that burned like fire in her chest. She knew the punishment if she ever broke it. Years before anyone knew him as Dami the Gentle Barber, he was just another faceless young man hustling in the wild streets of Lagos. Back then, his name wasn't even Dami to many. Everyone simply called him Dami, the short form of his middle name, Oluwasen. Life was hard. The kind of hard that pressed on a man's shoulders like a heavy stone. Each morning, he would jump on the back of an old yellow commercial bus, hanging dangerously by one hand, while shouting at the top of his voice, "Bus stop! Enter with your change! Enter with your change!" His voice would crack, but he didn't stop. Sweat rolled down his face under the burning Lagos sun. The smell of exhaust fumes, roasted corn, and hot bodies filled the air as the bus squeezed through traffic like a rat through a tiny hole. His boss, the bus driver, would glare at him through the rearview mirror, his voice like thunder. "Dami, if you lose my money today, you will trek home." But no matter how many hours he worked, no matter how many times he risked his life hanging from that rickety bus, his pocket was always light at the end of the day. Some days he didn't even make enough to eat. By night, Dami would walk home on tired feet, his stomach empty, his heart even emptier. Every day felt like running a race he could never win. One particular night, after a long, useless day, he couldn't take it anymore. He sat by the roadside under a flickering street light. The ground was rough, littered with sachet water bags and old newspapers. His head rested in his hands. His body shook, not from cold, but from frustration and defeat. "God," he whispered softly, "why is my life like this?" Just then, the soft hum of a car engine reached his ears. A clean black car rolled to a slow stop beside him. The window slid down smoothly. From inside, a deep, familiar voice called, "Dami?" Dami's head snapped up. His eyes widened in shock. Standing beside the car, stepping out with confidence, was Joe, his childhood friend. The boy who once shared roasted yam with him under the mango tree when they were both barefoot and poor. But this was not the same Joe. This Joe was transformed. He wore a gold chain that glimmered under the streetlight, a fine designer shirt, and shoes so polished they reflected the night sky. And that car. It was the kind of car Dami had only seen in movies. "Joe?" Dami gasped, stumbling to his feet. "Joe, is this really you?" Joe grinned wide, showing perfect white teeth. "It's me, brother." My goodness, it's been years. They hugged tightly, the embrace filled with memories of childhood laughter and shared hunger. When they pulled apart, Joe stepped back and looked at Dami carefully. His smile faded. "Dami, you look worn out. Tell me, what's been happening?" Dami's shoulders sagged like a broken bridge. He sat back on the dusty curb, his voice low. "Joe, I've tried everything. I hustle day and night, but no matter how I run, I keep ending up here. Empty pockets, empty belly." He shook his head, his throat tight. "I'm tired, my friend. Truly tired." Joe crouched beside him, a knowing look in his sharp eyes. "Listen to me, Dami," he said slowly. "There are two sides to this world. The side you see every day, and another side." Dami frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Joe's lips curled into a small, mysterious smile. "Come with me," he said, standing up and motioning toward his car. "Let me show you." Dami hesitated, staring at the shiny car, then at his old torn slippers. A strange feeling crept into his chest, fear mixed with hope. For a moment he thought of refusing, but then he remembered his empty pockets, his mother's weak voice asking for food, the landlord's threats ringing in his ears. Slowly, with a deep breath, Dami stood. "Okay," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "Take me there." And just like that, without knowing it, Dami took the first step toward a darkness he could never escape. The car moved quietly through the dark streets, leaving the noisy part of Lagos behind. Dami sat in silence, his hands tightly clasped on his knees. He stared out the window, watching as streetlights turned into long, lonely stretches of road. Finally, the car slowed and stopped in front of a quiet compound in Ijede. The walls were high, painted a dull gray. A single iron gate creaked as it opened. The moment they drove in, the air seemed to change, colder, heavier, like the place was holding its breath. "Come," Joe said softly, stepping out. Dami followed him, his feet dragging, his chest tight. Inside the compound, two young men stood at the far corner. They were strong, their faces hard, like carved stone. They didn't smile, they didn't speak, they only watched, their eyes sharp and silent. Dami swallowed nervously, his throat dry. "Who are they?" he whispered. Joe didn't answer. He just kept walking until they reached a small house at the back. The door opened slowly, and an old man stepped out. The sight of him made Dami's heart skip. His back was slightly bent, but his presence was heavy, like a mountain that could crush you without moving. His eyes were deep and dark, and when they landed on Dami, his legs almost gave way. "Good evening, sir," Joe said respectfully, bowing slightly. The old man gave a slow nod, then turned his gaze fully on Dami. "This is him," Joe said, his voice low. "The one I told you about." The old man didn't speak, only studied Dami for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then, with a slow step, he disappeared back inside, leaving the two of them standing in the cold night. Joe placed a hand on Dami's shoulder. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but carried a strange weight. "Dami, listen carefully," he said. "Some people think it's only body parts they use for certain things." Dami frowned, confused. Joe's eyes glimmered in the dark as he continued. "But hair is powerful, especially fresh hair, straight from the scalp. There are buyers who will pay anything for it. All you need to do is collect and deliver." The words fell heavy in Dami's ears. He stepped back quickly, shaking his head. "No, I can't do this, Joe," he said, his voice breaking. "This is wrong. This is evil." Joe didn't get angry. He only gave a calm, knowing nod, like he had expected that answer. "I understand," he said quietly. "Go home, but remember me when hunger strikes." Those words cut deep into Dami's heart like a blade. He turned and stormed out of the compound, anger and confusion swirling inside him. The night air outside felt no lighter, only colder, as he walked away, not knowing that darkness had already begun to follow him. The night was heavy and still, the kind that made even the crickets go quiet. Dami trudged home, his mind filled with Joe's words, his heart pounding with anger and confusion. He wanted to forget everything he had seen at that compound. The silent men, the old man's piercing eyes, the talk of fresh hair. But the moment he pushed open the wooden door to his house, all thoughts vanished. His mother lay on the floor, her body jerking violently. Foam gathered at the corners of her mouth, her hands clawing at the air, as if fighting something no one else could see. "Mama!" Dami screamed, his voice breaking. He dropped to his knees beside her, holding her trembling shoulders. "Mama, please, stay with me, please." Her eyes rolled back, her breath ragged and shallow. The small oil lamp in the corner flickered, throwing wild shadows on the wall. Dami's heart slammed in his chest as fear clawed at him. He didn't think. He just acted. With trembling arms, he lifted her thin, fragile body and stumbled out into the night. He ran barefoot through the dusty streets shouting, "Help me! Somebody help me!" But the streets were mostly empty. The few people he passed turned away, shaking their heads, unwilling to get involved. Desperation fueled his legs as he ran all the way to the nearest hospital. The bright lights inside stung his eyes. Nurses rushed to take his mother from his arms and lay her on a stretcher. Dami followed, gasping for air, his chest heaving. A doctor appeared, his white coat flapping as he walked briskly. He checked her pulse, listened to her breathing, then looked at Dami with a heavy sigh. "She needs treatment immediately," the doctor said. "Drugs, scans, tests. It will cost a lot." "How much?" Dami asked, his voice cracking. The doctor wrote down a figure on a small piece of paper and handed it to him. Dami's eyes widened. The numbers blurred as tears filled his vision. He didn't even have 1/4 of that amount. "Doctor, please," he begged, dropping to his knees. "Help her first. I will pay you later. Please, she is all I have." The doctor shook his head firmly. "I'm sorry. Hospital policy. Payment must come first." Dami's chest felt like it would burst. He stumbled outside, grabbed his phone, and began calling everyone he knew. One by one, his friends' numbers rang endlessly. Some didn't pick up. Others sent quick excuses. Family members sighed helplessly, promising to pray for him, but offering no help. Dami's tears fell freely. His mother's weak cries echoed in his ears. It felt like the world had turned its back on him. At last, with shaking hands, he scrolled to a name he hadn't wanted to call: Joe. The phone rang once, twice. Then, Joe's deep, calm voice came through. "Dami, what's wrong?" Through choked sobs, Dami explained everything. His mother's collapse, the hospital bills, the doctor's refusal to treat her without payment. "Stay where you are," Joe said simply. "I'm coming." Within 30 minutes, the sound of a car engine roared outside the hospital. The same clean black car from before stopped in front of the entrance. Joe stepped out, composed and confident. Without a word, he went straight to the billing desk. He pulled out thick bundles of cash and began paying for everything: hospital bills, drugs, scans. He even bought extra medicine to take home. Dami stood in stunned silence as the nurses rushed back to treat his mother immediately. When Joe was done, he turned to Dami and handed him a brown envelope, heavy and full. Dami stared at it, confused. What is this?" he asked, his voice trembling. Joe placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice soft but steady. "Capital," he said. "Use it to start a barbershop. Build something for yourself. I even have an extra clipper I can give you to begin." Dami's eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know what to say. "Joe, this is too much." Joe gave him a small knowing smile. "It's nothing, brother. You'll pay me back one day. Or not. Just take it." Dami hesitated for a moment. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that this was wrong, that there was a string attached he couldn't yet see. He wanted to refuse, to hand back that's the envelope and run far away. But then he remembered his mother, lying weak and fragile on that hospital bed. He thought of the doctor's cold eyes, the landlord's threats, the hunger in his own stomach. Slowly, with trembling hands, he took the envelope. "Thank you," he whispered. Joe's smile widened, but his eyes remained unreadable. "That's what brothers are for," he said quietly. And though Dami didn't know it yet, that moment, that single decision, was the beginning of his fall. Dami started small, a narrow shop in a corner kiosk just off the main road. He painted it himself, hung a mirror on the wall, and used the old clipper Joe gave him. The first week, he only had 2 customers. By the second week, word had spread. His cuts were clean, his fades sharp, and best of all, his price was unbelievably low. "Just 300 naira?" a woman asked in disbelief as he finished trimming her son's hair. "Yes, ma. We're still new, just trying to build trust." She nodded approvingly. "I will tell my neighbors." She did. They came, in droves. Within 2 months, Dami had moved from the corner kiosk to a proper shop along Alade Crescent. White tiles, spinning red-blue barber pole, a standing fan, 2 chairs instead of 1, and he still charged less than everyone else. People stopped going to other barbers. "What's the secret, Dami?" a fellow barber once asked him in passing. Dami smiled. "Hard work and consistency." But it wasn't just hard work. Every night after closing, Dami swept the floor thoroughly. He picked out the freshest hair, still soft, warm from the scalp, and packed them into Ziploc bags. He labeled each bag carefully with names and dates. Every Thursday and Sunday evening, a black van stopped behind the shop. A man in dark sunglasses took the bags without speaking. Dami never asked where it went. Business continued to grow. He hired 1 assistant, then 2. Even during fuel scarcity, he never ran out of power. He bought a generator, painted the shop again, mounted a TV on the wall. Mothers brought their toddlers. Teenagers streamed in after school. On Sundays, pastors came in their agbadas for shape-ups before evening service. Dami had become a household name. They called him Dami the Gentle Barber. But every clip, every shave, every sweep of hair into a dustpan was part of a quiet, deadly trade. Hair was his currency. Currency bought with deception. Now back at the barber shop, where the truth was already out, Janet looked at her husband, then at the crowd. She began to tremble. I didn't mean to say anything. I was drunk." "Tell them the truth," Jessica insisted. Janet burst into tears. "It was never supposed to get this far." She led them into the house, past the small sitting room, past the children's bedroom, into the last room, the one always locked. Inside there were bags, transparent nylon bags, each labeled with dates and names. Inside them, hair, human hair. When the people saw the room with the bags, there was silence, then shouting, then curses. "You used our children," someone screamed. "Are you mad?" "Hair, ordinary hair," Dami shouted back. "It's not ordinary when it's used for fraud." They dragged him outside. Some slapped him. Others spat on him. The police came, took him away. Janice stood quietly, watching her husband be bundled into the van. He kept shouting, "I didn't kill anyone. I only collected hair. The door slammed shut. The shop was locked down. The signboard removed. Parents whispered in fear. Some took their children for special prayers. Others shaved their heads and burned the hair. Joe was never found. Dami's trial began 6 weeks later. The prosecutors couldn't charge him for ritual killings. There was no murder. But cybercrime, conspiracy, and aiding financial fraud, those held. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. In the courtroom, Janet sat quietly. She had cut her hair, wore no makeup, said nothing. When asked why she revealed the secret, she simply said, "I was tired of sleeping beside evil." People in Alade Crescent still get haircuts. New barbers have opened shops, but once in a while, When someone mentions Fresh Cuts Barbershop, a shadow passes over their faces because now they know and they will never forget. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, comment what you learned from the tale, share with friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more African tales just like this one. Thank you.